Hello, I'm Father James Kelleher, and I'm the founder and director of Eucharistic Family Rosary Crusade. I do Rosary Crusades all over the United States, England, Ireland, and Central America. And today I'd like to talk to you about a great saint, Saint Pius V, who was a Dominican and who was a great promoter of the Rosary. First of all, let's look at his early life. Imagine yourself being in northern Italy, and you're part of a family that's poor, and you're a shepherd. Well, that's what Anthony Ghislieri, which was the birth name of St. Pius V, that's how he grew up. He was a shepherd in the fields. He was close to God and nature. At the age of 14, he entered the Dominican order, founded by St. Dominic around 1215. Now, St. Pius V, he lived from 1504 to 1572, so this is a good 300 years later. But he enters the Dominican order at age 14, and he takes the religious name Michael. And in the religious order, he was a very bright fellow, and a very prayerful fellow, and a very ascetic fellow, meaning that he combined prayer and penance and a virtuous life to become a very holy man. And so after he was ordained, for 16 years he taught in a seminary-type setting. And his leadership value was recognized, and so then he eventually was made a bishop in 1556 when he was about 52 years old. Now you have to understand what was going on during the time that he was a bishop. Well, if you look at 1556, that's about 30 years after the beginning of the Protestant Reformation. So he lived in the heart of what was called the Catholic Counter-Reformation, in which the Catholic Church had to, so to speak, reorganize and go deeper to counteract all the Protestants that were running all over Europe, stealing Catholics from the Catholic Church. So he became good friends with St. Charles Borromeo, who was the Cardinal Archbishop of Milan. And together with others, they helped to prevent the Protestant Reformation from invading Italy. It had already overrun half of Germany. How did he carry out his work? He carried out it first with an intensive life of prayer, secondly, a life of penitential practice, and thirdly, a life focused on the virtues. Part of his time as a Dominican, he was also made master of novices, where he trained the novices in these same three practices. If you and I want to have an impact on what we're doing in our life, even if we're not a priest, even if we're not a monk, we need to have a strong life of prayer, and we need to have a strong life of some form of penitential practice, where we sacrifice things so that we can grow in the virtuous life. Because we all know that what is the characteristic of a saint? Living a life of heroic virtue. And so to live heroic virtue, we must have prayer, we must have penance. Eventually, in 1566, Pope St. Pius was elected the Pope. There, he set about instilling reform in the church. He simplified the papal court, removed a lot of its Trappistes, and made it a more court that reflected, poverty, evangelical poverty, the kind of poverty he lived. And he also helped bring about the reform of the liturgy and the stabilization of the Roman liturgy through the 1570 Roman Missal. So this Pope, who came from a shepherd's background, ended up having a huge influence in the Counter-Reformation. One of the things that Pope St. Pius V was most noted for was his role in the Battle of Lepanto. What was that battle about? At that time in history, the Ottoman Empire, which was a Muslim empire, had grown in great military strength, and their goal was to annihilate Europe. And they assembled a great fleet off the coast of Greece. And so the Catholics had to answer that with their own fleet. However, their own fleet was much less powerful than the Ottoman fleet, and it looked like it was going to be a disaster for the Catholic fleet. So how did St. Pius V play a role in the victory at Lepanto? Well, he called all of Europe to pray the rosary in advance of this great battle. He believed that through the power of the Virgin Mary's prayer, Europe could be saved. And so people all over Europe began to pray the rosary daily. Well, the day of the battle struck, and the two armadas engaged in a fierce battle. Well, the Holy Spirit created a great wind, and it caused the Muslim fleet to get turned around, and they actually started destroying each other. And in a relatively short time, the Catholic Christians had won the battle, and the Muslim fleet was totally defeated. In thanksgiving for this, Saint Pius V declared October 7th, the day of this great battle, 1571. He proclaimed October 7th as the Feast of Our Lady of Victory. And Pope Gregory, a little bit later, changed that feast to the Feast of Our Lady of the Rosary, which we call it today. You can see how this great spiritual leader, Saint Pius V, played a great role in protecting the Catholic Christian faith in Europe by a great call to prayer, a great call to pray the Rosary daily. Pray the Rosary every day. So this is what we need to do now at our own time in the 21st century. We have all kinds of things going on, all kinds of wars going on. And we have a problem going on with Islamic terrorism. So let's you and I pray the Rosary daily, pray the Rosary every day for world peace in our family, in our nation, and throughout the world. Ave Maria.